Okay, good evening, everyone. We are starting Baruch Hashem, the 100th blot tonight of Maseches Shabbos. Chasdei Hashem. This also is just about the 2/3 mark of the Masechta. There are 157 blot in Maseches Shabbos, and Baruch Hashem, we've been chugging through, and some of the sugyas are easier, some are harder. Tonight's a little bit easier, Baruch Hashem. Not that there is no lumdus to be had. If this was a shir that we gave a lot of time for Rishonim, we would have a heyday today, but that unfortunately is not the model here, and or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it. So we're going to get started on the bottom of Tzadik Testament Bays. We're starting about 10 lines from the bottom, Boy Rabba. And here we're going to go through a variety of questions, and as you can see, a couple of new Mishnayos on Daf Kuf. We're going to be stopping actually a little bit more than halfway down on Kuf Amud Bays, because the next Mishnah will take us onto a new sugya, and we'll continue that tomorrow night. Opens the Gemara, 10 lines from the bottom, Tzadik Testament Bays, Boy Rabba, Zorak Daf, V'nach al Gabe Yesedos Mahu. A person throws a board, and it lands on top of pegs. And in the process of the board landing on top of the pegs, it creates its own rishus. How so? Let's say the board that you're throwing is 4x4. It is just a square piece of wood, and you throw it up in the air, and it lands on top of 4 pegs perfectly. So it's 4x4, and the peg stood taller than 10 tfachim. So you've created an entity. It's 10 tfachim in height and 4x4. Now, there are no walls, but we have a principle in halacha where we say that if there is a flat top and there are 4 walls, we assume that the walls drop in halacha, good achis mechitza or good nachis mechitza, and that works midaraisa. When I was in camp as a kid, they used to have an outdoor beis hakneses, and the same shaila there. Was that a rishus hayachid mamish, or was it not a rishus hayachid? The roof there was sloped, which was its own shaila. But nevertheless, that's the case that's going on here. You throw this board, and then when it lands, it creates a 10 tefach by 4x4 tefach item. So that's the question of the Gemara. Mahu, what's the din? Says the Gemara, wait a minute. My kami baile. What question are you asking? Are you asking if hanochas chayfetz ve'asiyas mechitza bahade hadade ka'asu? If you're asking the question of when you generate this new entity, and whether at the same moment you can violate, that was yesterday's conversation with Rav Yochanan. Remember, we were saying, let's say that you removed a little bit of dirt. When it was 9 tefach deep, you took a shovel and you removed the 10th tefach. So we were trying to clear yesterday, how does that work? Do we say that the change in the status of that space from Rishus HaYachid to a non-Rishus HaYachid or vice versa? So if that's the case, we spoke about it yesterday. What was Rava's question to start with? Hainu, that's what the Gemara says here. Hainu de Rabbi Yochanan. That's what we spoke about yesterday. So it says, no, Kikami Baile the Rava. What was Rava's case here with the board, where when he threw the board, it landed on the pegs and created a 10 by 4x4 space? So it says the Gemara, Kikami Baile the Rava, Kigon de Zarak Daf, the Chayfetz al Gabav, Mai. You throw a board, on top of the board is an item, and you've got really good aim and really good balance, and you throw it up in the air, and the item manages to still land on top of the board as the board lands on the pegs. So now what do you have? A similar shaila, but there was something on top of the board. So that's really the question here, mahu. Now, let's see how the Gemara paints both sides. 5-6 lines from the bottom. Do we say, Kevan de bahade hadade ka'asu, do we say that they're landing at the same time, and therefore you can't really say that you have to separate them. You have to say that you're creating a rishus. You can't do both at the same time. It's not possible. Or do we say differently? O Dilma, perhaps, since when you throw something, let's say if you throw the board and there's a box on top of the board, the box is going to bounce a little bit when the board lands on the pegs. So you're throwing this board, and there's a box on top. You throw this up in the air, and when the board comes down, there's a separation of the item that's on the board. So that's the other possibility in the Gemara. O Dilma, 4 lines from the bottom. Kavan de lo efshar, because it's not possible, de lo midla porta, that the thing that's on top of the shelf, on top of this little board, wouldn't raise up a little bit, behadar naich, and then fall back down again. Then ke'asiyas chayfetz v'hanochas chayfetz dami. Now it's in sequence. First, the Rishus HaYachid was made, and then the item fell on top. Now there's sequential. It's not concurrent. So what would we say there? Says the Gemara, Teku, we're not sure. Amar Rava says pshitali, moving into a slightly different topic. This is a Gemara that we saw earlier in the Masechta, quite early in the Masechta. Rava says as follows, pshitali, it's obvious to me, says Rava, Mayim al gabe mayim hainu hanachasan. If you pour water, let's say you throw water from a reshus hayachid into a reshus harabim, and it lands in water, so the fact that it landed in water, that is considered a full hanacha. At the same time that that's true, egos al gabe mayim lav hainu hanachasan. If you take a walnut and you throw it from, let's say you throw it from a reshus harabim, and you throw it into someone's private backyard, and they have a little pool there. So it's resting and floating in the pool. So it says the Gemara, top of Kuf Amud Aleph, first words on the top of Kuf Amud Aleph, Lav Hainu Hanachasan. We know that is not going to be considered a Hanacha, not in Isra D'Oraisa. As well, Rashi just highlights, the first Rashi on the page, that just like throwing, just like throwing a walnut and it landing in water is not a Hanacha, Rashi highlights, the Imnatala Misham, and if you pick it up from there, Lav Akiri, it's also not considered to be an Akira. So that is just an interesting ha'ara, that when a nut is floating there, it's not considered a hanacha. Okay. So by Rabbi, where's Rabba's question? Rabba's question is as follows: Egos bekli tzaf al gabe mayim. What would be the din if you throw a walnut into a kli, but the kli is floating on the water? Mi amrina, in second line, do we say basar egos azlinan? We follow the egos itself. We look more myopically. Where did it land? V'hanayich, it landed in a kli. We only look at its immediate receptacle, not the fact that the receptacle is floating on the water. Or do we say odilma basar kli azlinan? We follow even the wider perspective, not just the kli, but we look where the kli is resting. Basar kli azlinan v'halo nayich. So again, you've got three factors here. You've got the egos, which is inside a kli, which is floating on the water. Do we look more narrowly at the fact that the egos fell into a kli, or do we look more broadly and say, no, but the kli, even though you threw the egos in there, but the kli is floating on water, and that's not considered a hanacha? Here too, the Gemara says, line 4, teku. A variation on this theme, shemen al gabe yain. We know, of course, that the density of oil is less than that of water. So if you pour in oil on wine, so then the oil is going to float. So this, it says the Gemara, shemen al gabe yain machlokes, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri v'Rabbanan. This is a machlokes tanaim. What's a machlokes tanaim? The Tanan, the Mishnah writes, shemen shetzaf al gabe yain. If there's oil that's floating on top of wine, v'naga tvul yom b'shemen lo pasal ela shemen. So here, the Tana Kama was of the opinion that if you have this clearly demarcated oil that's floating on top of wine, so let's call it an inch of oil, and then a full glass of wine, and a tvul yom, someone who has to wait for Her of Shemesh. He's gone to the mikvah already, but he has to wait until the sun goes down. He's a sheni latuma, and he sticks his finger in the top and just touches the oil. Well, how does that impact what's underneath the oil? How does that impact the wine? That's a machlokes tanaim. The Tana Kama says, tvul yom b'shemen, v'naga tvul yom b'shemen lo pasal ela shemen. He is only contaminated. What a remarkable divide. Just think about that. You're touching liquid in one cup, but because one is less dense than the other, so there's a clear line in the sand. It's unbelievable that the tumah doesn't transfer down to the liquid. Unbelievable. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is the counterpart. He argues, Omer Shneim Chibur Zelazah. You cannot separate that which is in the same cup, which is a little bit more Sephardic, but the laws of tumah are not always purely rational because they're falling on a halachic base. But nevertheless, that is the machlokes that we have here in the Tanaim. And the Gemara doesn't conclude here. All right, let's get into some lamdas here. It says the Gemara as follows: Amar Abaye teaches a din. Bor birshus harabim amuka asara urachava shmona. Let's say that you have a pit that is exactly 10 tefach deep, and it's 8 tefach wide. Now we know, of course, that the shear for reshus hayachid is way less than that. It's 4. Okay, so it's 10 deep by 8 wide. So then what do? V'zorak letocha machatzelas chayiv, and you throw a mat inside there. Do we say that this mat is going to line the bottom in such a way where now the cavity is less, it's less than 10, and therefore you're pater? Says Abaye, no, you're chayiv. However, check this out, chilka b'machatzelas pater. However, if you would have taken this mat and instead of lying it flat, you divided the 10 by 8 into 2 10 by 4s. So the depth is 10 and it's 8 wide, but you cut it in half. But the machatzelas has a width to it. So now each side is 3.9. Each side is less than 4. So there, unbelievably, Abaye says you are pater in such a case, because when you split it right to left and you try to split the 8 into 2 parts, because the machatzelas takes up a little bit of that space. So therefore, we no longer have the requisite shear to make a Rishus HaYachid. And therefore, if you throw to that space, you're going to be patur. It's just a sharp contrast to his own opinion, a line above, which is that when you put it on the ground, the mat is not batel in regards to the height. We don't say we reduce the height by point whatever the width of the mat is, and that's because it doesn't belong there. But if you're building a wall to stay, if you're building the mat to stay, so then he has a beautiful svar there. Now, yesterday, remember we already referenced it once today. Yesterday we spoke about this quandary of Rav Yochanan as to whether or not in the process of adding dirt or subtracting dirt to break the threshold of Rishus HaYachid to non-Rishus HaYachid space, there Rav Yochanan was confounded by which one was the right derech. But Abaye was not confused about this at all. And here's how the Gemara distinguishes between Abaye and Rav Yochanan. Le Abaye, according to Abaye, according to Abaye, for whom it's clear that when this mat was put up in the vertical space to separate each 10 by 4 space, making really each one 10 by 3.9 and 10 by 3.9, there he understood for sure that it was going to be mevatel the space. Kol shekain chulia de mevatel mechitza. He had no suffix as to whether or not the din of Rabbi Yochanan would have been true. He felt that it was for sure the case that the chulia, that the extra dirt that was put in would cause a status change for the mechitza if you go from 10 to 9 by adding a scoop of dirt, let's say. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, the meboile chulia machatzel, the meboile chulia, he put my comma in the wrong place here. The meboile chulia, that he was struggling in yesterday's daf about the case of the chulia, about adding dirt. Machatzelas pshita de lo mevatelas mechitzta. Here, this is less severe, and he would say for sure this is not going to be mevatelas mechitza, that it's not going to ruin it. So this is where we'd have a machlokas Abai and Rabbi Yochanan, is in a case they didn't live at the same time. Rabbi Yochanan and Abai were 100 plus years apart, probably a little bit more, and they disagreed in this case where you had a pit that was 10 tefach deep and it was 8 wide. What happens if you put a mat right at the 4 tefach mark in the width? So there, Rabbi Yochanan would have said it doesn't ruin the status. It's 2 rishuyos hayachid, and Abai would have said it's a problem. So that's the machlokas that we have between them. And the Gemara here continues. The Omar Abaye. Abaye adds the following: Bor birshus harabim amuka asar urachava arba. Classical case, you have a pit in a Rishus Harabim. It has a depth of 10 and it has a width of 4. It's actually breadth and width. It's really 10 by 4 by 4. Whenever it says that, we assume that it's square in its length and width. So the depth is 10 and it's 10 by 4 by 4. So we should pause right here and say, this is a Rishus HaYachid. If you throw from outside to inside, you're going to be chayav. So here's where the Gemara makes a chakira. Meleya mayim. If the pit is filled with water, v'zarak l'tocha chayav. If the pit is filled with water, it's 10 by 4 by 4, and you fill it with water, it remains a bore. It remains, quote unquote, its own rishus. But what if you fill it with something else? What if you fill it with fruit? Melea peros, you have a 10 by 4 by 4, but you fill it up with all the fruit. You wanted to keep it safe from wild animals, and that's where you kept it back in the day. 10 by 4 by 4 pit in the ground, you filled it with fruit. Does that still have the din of a Rishus HaYachid, such that if I threw from a Rishus HaRabim onto the fruit that's now in my 10 by 4 by 4 pit, would I be chayiv or not? Says the Gemara in the name of Abaye, if it's Malaya Peros Bezarak Latocha Pater. Why? Why do we say that if there's water in there, that you're still going to be chayev for throwing something into that 10 by 4 by 4 pit with water? But if it's fruit and you throw from Rishus Harabim into there, it's still 10 by 4 by 4, but filled with fruit, you're going to be pater. Why? My taima, says the Gemara, 1/3 of the way down on Daf Kufam and Aleph. Mayim lo mevat lemechitzta, peiros mevat lemechitzta. Water doesn't ruin the rishus itself, but peiros are mevatel a rishus. This is going to require, we don't have time for this, but this requires a lot of commentary, because the truth is that the answer of the Gemara is not detailed. It's what we assumed in the question, which is that one breaks the mechitza and one doesn't. So we'd have to spend time in the Rishonim here. But it is a very good question as to why we make a distinction. Why does Abaye make this distinction between the contents of a Rishus HaYachid being water, in which case it remains a Rishus HaYachid, Masha'en Kain, if the contents of this Rishus HaYachid are fruit, so then it's no longer considered a reshus. What's the difference? I reach in, I scoop out some water, I reach in and I grab an apple. Shouldn't make much of a difference, but the Gemara makes this distinction. And this line in the Gemara of Mayim lo mevat lemechitzta, Peros mevat lemechitzta, requires a fair amount of time and commentary to figure it out. Nevertheless, to support the Shita of Abaye, Tanya Nami Hachi, a brisa was found to support his shita. What is the brisa that supports this shita of Abaye that says that when a bore is filled with water, that it still has the din of a reshus hayachid? Masha'ein came when it's filled with peiros, that it does not. Says the brisa as follows: Hazorek, someone who throws min hayam le isratia. They throw from a water source to a public domain. Umin ha-isratia liyam pater. We typically assume that a yam is a carmelist. Typically, we assume that it's a carmelist and it has a status midrabanan. So when you throw from a carmelist, which has a status midrabanan, to any rishus, you're only going to violate an isra derabanan. So that's typically the case. Now let's see the end of this brisa, which supports exactly the din that Abaye said. Reb Shimon Omer, im yesh b'makom. See this? There's a word missing here. That's what Rashi here adds in, that we're talking about water. Im yesh b'makom shezarak amok asar v'rachab arba chayev. If there is in that space of 10 deep and 4 wide, you're going to be chayev. Take a look at Rashi. Dibur Hamaskil, Reb Shimon Omer, to the right, about a centimeter below where we are, a little bit more. Reb Shimon Omer, im yesh beyam makom shezarak, in the place where you threw guma, there's a pit. Miyuchedes levada amuka asara v'rachava daled reshus hayachad la'atzmahi v'lo have kishar yam. So here, this is what Rav Shimon is talking about, is that when do we say that this pit still has the din of a reshus hayachid? Look at the last word before the Mishnah, you're chayev, and there's water. So that's where Abaye learns his din from, is from Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon is the one who taught Abaye, or maybe it was found afterwards, because the brises were never collected in a book ever, actually. We still only have them now in the format that we do, which is scattered throughout Shas. So maybe Abaye never saw it, and that's why he taught the din on his own. And someone said, by the way, Rebbe, Abaye, we found the brisa just like you in the name of Reb Shimon. And this is the Mari Malcolm that supports that. We're now going to learn an actual primary source here. We've seen this Gemara 5 or 6 times, maybe more, in the Masechta already, in the first 100 blot, but this is actually where it exists here on Daf Kuf. And this Mishnah opens halfway down Kuf Amud Aleph. Hazorik arba amos bakosel, a person throws dalad amos against a wall. If you throw above the 10 tefach mark on the wall, it's as if you threw in the air. Amakom ptur. And if you throw it above, if you throw it below, the 10 tefach line, it's as if you throw on the ground. And hazorik ba'aretz arba amos chayev. And of course, if you throw on the ground, you're going to be chayev. So that's what the din that we learned. So then the Gemara opens with its immediate question. Again, we've seen this many times, but this is really where the din belongs, or where the din is found. Says the Gemara, "Halo nach, nothing ever rested. How could you ever say that you're going to be chayev?" We're asking on the seifa of the Mishnah, the Reisha, you're pater. But we don't care if it's nach or not, you're pater. But in the seifa, we said that if you throw below, let's say you throw it against the wall at 8 tefach mark, and the ball just bounces off. It's a rubber ball and a solid wall. Hello nach. There's no hanacha. We know that when you do carrying, when you actually violate carrying, there has to be an akira and there has to be a hanacha. So here, there's no hanacha. So that's what the Gemara is bothered by. It's not a logistical question. It's a halachic question, which is, where's the hanacha? You can't violate the Isra without hanacha. Answers the Gemara. Amar Rav Yochanan b'dvei l'shmeinu shaninu. We're talking about something that's very sticky. And when you throw it, it sticks on the wall. Let's say you decided to egg the neighbor's house. So you throw from a Reshus HaRabim, and you throw against their house. By and large, the egg just drips down the wall. So if it were to be a kegro it's the right shear, so then you'd be chayev. Absolutely, it's stuck against the wall. That's what Rav Yochanan says. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rab, Amar Rav Chia, Zarak lamala me'asara, the halcha b'nacha b'chor kol shehu banu lemachlokas Rav Meir v'Rabbanan. Let's say that you throw something against the wall above the 10 tefach mark. That's what it says here. Zarak lamala me'asara. And it landed in a cutout, a little hole in the wall. So you've got your wall right here. Let's say that this is the 10 tefach mark. So my hand is at the 15 tefach mark. You throw, and it just kind of lands. You throw something, and it just kind of lands in a little hole. Now it's 13 tefachim off the ground. So in our Mishnah, we said that was pater. but we didn't realize what the case was then. Let's see what this case is, because here the Gemara in the name of Rav is painting this picture that if in fact it lands inside a hole in the wall, a variation of our Mishnah, what's the din? That is a machlokas tanaim. Banu lemachlokas Rav Meir v'Rabbanan 2/3 of the way down. Daf Kuf Amud Aleph Rav Meir Amar chokekin lahash lemechayev. This is really a din that was learned in regards to Hilchos Mezuzah. That let's say you had an arched doorway, it's a semicircle at the top of the door, so maybe there's no din for a mechitza. Maybe there's no din for a mezuzah because there's no tzuras pesach. It's not. It doesn't have a squared off top. So says the Gemara. That there's a machlokas tanaim about this. Do we say chokik in lahashlim that you have this semicircle, but in theory, if there was space to cut out and square out the top, then you would taka put a mezuzah there. That's mezuzah. That's called chokik in lahashlim, and there's a shita of Rav Meir. Masha'ein ken, according to the Rabbanon, and this is how we paskin the Rabbanon the Amrei ein chokik in lahashlim. They say no, the door is as it is. We don't care if you're conceptually able to cut out the rest of the. It's not shayach. We don't care. It's not relevant at all. And therefore, they would say in such a case that there's no chiyuv for a mezuzah there. So here too, we're extrapolating from that world to this world. Do we say that we cut out a conceptual cutout of the wall to say that it really maybe fell below the 10 tefach mark, even though it landed above, because we're chokik in lahash that we theoretically cut out? That's Rav Meir. Rav Yochanan, not Rav Yochanan, the Rabbanan argue against Rav Meir and say ein chokik in lahashlim, and therefore you would not be chayv. And we have a brisa to support the similarity of this case to the case of mezuzah by Rav Meir and the Rabbanan. Tanya nami hachi, the brisa stipulates zorak lamala me'asar v'halcha v'nacha b'chor kolshu Rav Meir mechayv v'chachamim pocher. Good. So that's still going to be a machlokas tanaim, unclearest. I mean, we know we paskin like the Rabban. So we would say that even in that case, you're going to be pater. We do not say chokik and lahashlim, that we conceptually carve out all of the space that could have been carved out, and we would then say that you're chayav. We don't say that. We paskin like the Rabbanon, that ain't chokik and lahashlim. Amar Rav Yehuda Marab, Teil hamislaket asara mitoch arba v'zarak b'nach al gabav chayav. What slope is considered a valuable slope to change a rishus? We know that something that's 10 by 4 by 4 is a rishus hayachid. But what if instead of looking like this, it looks like this, like one of the legs is on an angle? So what is considered to be the angle at which we say that it's its own entity? So the Gemara has a very specific answer. You can take out your trigonometry calculators and you can figure out the sine or the cosine of this, if whichever you prefer. Have a good time. Do the math. This is what the Gemara says. Amar Rav Yehuda Marav, Tel hamislaket asara mitoch arba. If you have a hill that gains a height of 10 tfachim, within a distance, it gains a height of 10 tfachim, within a distance of 4 amos, so you're looking at some kind of slope like this, so then that's already its own rishus. And then your zarak v'nach al gabav, you're going to be chayiv in such a case. V'zarak v'nach al gabav chayiv. Tanya nami hachim, we have a brisa to support this idea. Mavui, if you have a mavui sheshava lesocho, that its insides are all smooth, benase madra on the rishus harabim, but as you get out, it slopes down to the rishus harabim. Shava the rishus harabim, or the rishus harabim itself is very flat, but benase medron lesocha. But when you get in, the mavui is up on an angle, whichever the case may be. So then, in those cases, osa mavui eino tzarech lo lechi v'lo koreh. Interesting that in those cases, even though in general we have a rule that in order to carry in a mavui, you have to have a lechi or a koreh, you have to have some type of heker to indicate that this place is a place where you're only allowed to carry because a mechitza was put into place. So that's only true under certain circumstances. If the slope of the mavui, or if the slope immediately outside the mavui in the rishus harabim is significant enough, so then there's no need for a lechi or for a koreh. Concludes this brisa in support of this idea of, who was it? It was Rav, I believe. Yeah, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Marav. So there, Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel Omer tel hamislaket asar mitoch arba v'zark v'nach al gabav chayav. The same exact rate is that if over the course of 4 amos there is an elevation of 10 tfachim, it's really it's not even such a sharp angle. I didn't do the math, but we can figure out the actual angle itself. Then that's going to be a rishus hayachid. Masha'ein kain. If it did it over 4 tfachim, 4 amos, 10 tfachim, great. If it's 5 amos and 10 tfachim, it's just barely slighter, but that's the breaking point, is that within 10 tfachim, within 4 amos, it has to elevate 10 tfachim. Very good. Baruch Hashem, that brings us to the Mishnah, about 10 lines from the bottom of Kuf Amud Aleph. Says the Mishnah as follows. Zarak letoch dalet amos. Let's say I threw something only 3. I threw something 3 amos. And then v'nisgalgel chutz l'dalet amos, and it rolled out pater. The halacha is that you're pater. However, chutz l'dalet amos v'nisgalgel l'toch dalet amos chayev. If I throw something to the fifth amma from where I'm sitting, and then it rolls back in, you got a backspin on the ball, so then you're going to be chayev in such a case. Says the Gemara, wait a minute. If it rolled back in, v'halo nach, where's the hanacha? The ball, it kept moving right back to you. Where was the hanacha? Says the Gemara, a wild answer. Amar of Yochanan, hu shenoch al gabe mashu. So you threw something up. Let's say that here's my dalet amos, right? So I throw something, it gets up in the air, and then it kind of curves back in. That's the assumption of the Gemara here. Take a look at Rashi. That's not me making that up. Take a look at Rashi, because Rav Yochanan just said, "Hu shenach al gabe mashu." Keep a finger there. Rashi, the second of the middle width lines of Rashi, he says, "Shenach al gabe mashu, she'amad ktsas ve'achar kach niskalgel." So you throw something up, the wind kind of holds it, and it slows down. That is considered a tanacha. Afal pi that gravity had not done its job yet because it didn't hit the ground. Namely, it's possible to have a hanacha without it landing on anything, simply that the wind paused that thing from flying in the air. So let's say, for argument's sake, you are throwing a ping pong ball. A ping pong ball is obviously easy to be thrown in the wind. So you throw it very hard. You tried to throw it as hard as you could. It only went 5 amos because of the wind, and it literally paused in the air and then came back. You're chayev. That's a huge chiddush of Rav Yochanan, as Rashi explains it. And Tanya Nami Hachi, we have a brisa to support his idea as well. How so? Says the Gemara as follows: Tanya Nami Hachi, Zarak chutz l'dalet amos v'dachafto haruach. If it's just blowing around in the wind, it never really stops. And then v'hichnisto, and then it came back into the dalet amos. V'afal pi shechazar v'hotzio, goes back and forth pater because it never was paused by the wind. It just got thrown around by the wind like a little rag doll. That's not sufficient. However, achazto haruach, if in fact the wind paused that thing from flying for just a moment, it held it up. So then under those circumstances, achazto haruach mashu afal pisha chazar v'hichnasto chayv, even though at the end it only landed 2 amos away from you. It's the boomerang. You throw that boomerang, you're going to be chayev. As long as the wind held it up. At some point, it has to slow down. And that would be chayev. Amar Rava, toch gimel rabbanon. As we spoke about many blot ago, Rashi here in Dibur Hamaschel Rabbanan, 4 lines from the bottom, highlights this machlokas of what we spoke about many blot ago called klutza k'mishahon chadamya, that when you throw something from one rishus hayachid to another through a rishus harabim, so we had a principle called klutza k'mishahon chadamya, that when you throw something through the rishus harabim, it's as if it actually paused in the rishus harabim. So there, the Rabbanan didn't agree with that. The Rabbanan, as Rashi points out 3 lines from the bottom, leis lahu klutza k'mishahoncha. They do not hold of that. Let's go back into our Gemara. Amar Rava toch gimel. What if you're within 3 tfachim of the ground, and then the Rabbanan, according to the Rabbanan who do not hold of klutza k'mishahoncha, they don't hold of kluta, but you're within 3 tvachim of the ground. So now you've got 2 powers kind of working against each other. We know lavud. You're within 3 tvachim of the ground, as if it's on the ground. But the Rabbanan say kluta, they don't hold of kluta k'mishahon chadamya. So which one wins? So tzricha hanacha al gabe mashu. So Rava asserts that the Rabbanan would hold that there needs to be a hanacha on something. It's not just a lavud alone, because we have this idea of ein kluta k'mishahon chadamya. There has to be some type of hanacha. The wind, whatever, has to be something. Otherwise, you would not be chayiv. Yasi Meremar v'ka'amar la shmaisa. Meremar was sitting and teaching this din, this idea of Rava, that according to the Rabbanan who hold that there's no klutza k'mishahon chadamya, that even within gimel tvachim from the ground, one would be pater until there's actually a hanacha of some kind. Amar le Ravina le Meremar, turning to the top of Kufim Beis, Ravina says back to him, Lav hainu masnisin. Doesn't this sound like our Mishnah? The Amar Rav Yochanan, and in our Mishnah, what did it say? V'shanach al gabe mashu. Beautiful. Maybe we could argue that this shita of Rava, that according to the Rabbanan who do not hold of klutza k'mishahon chadamya, and you're throwing close to the ground within 3 tfachim, and we said it needs a hanacha. What kind of hanacha could there be? So says the Gemara, it must be just like our Mishnah. Lav hainu masnisin v'amar Rav Yochanan v'shanach al gabe mashu. And as Rashi explained on the bottom of the previous summit, it's as if the wind kind of paused it for a moment and then it continued. That's what we're talking about. Amar le, Meremar says back to Ravina. Is that right? Yeah, Meremar says back to Ravina, wait a minute. Misgalgel ka'amris. The cases are not comparable. Our Mishnah was dealing with miskalgel, with something that was rolling. What was Rava talking about? Oh, sorry, let's continue. Miskalgel ein sofo lanuach. That when you're miskalgel something, lav dafka, we don't know where it's going to stop. We have no idea. Aval hai kevan de sofo lanuach. But here in the case of the Rabbanan, who are talking about kluta k'mishahuncha or ein kluta k'mishahuncha, because since it's going to land at some point, then afal gav de lo nach kemad de nachtami. We should have assumed that it's in fact like it landed. So that's Rava's in Kamash Malan, that we don't make that assumption, that we don't assume that just because we don't know where a ball is going to stop rolling, we don't know when that's going to happen, depends what surface it's on, depends on the friction coefficient and 100 other things. But here, when I throw up a ball in the air, I know Berach where it's going to land. So that's why the Gemara says the case of Rava. Rava had to come along and teach this din that the Rabbanan still requires some type of hanacha, because otherwise we could have made the erroneous thought that there's a difference between miskalgel and throwing something through the air. That brings us to the next Mishnah on the top of Kuf Mud Beis, 4 lines from the top of the page. And says the Mishnah as follows: Hazorik bayam arba amos pater. You're in the ocean, you throw more than 4 amos, you're pater. Im haya rekak mayim urishus harabim mehalechas bo. Let's say that there was a puddle. Rekak mayim, normally rekak is spit, like a person would be rokek. This is a rekak mayim, it's just a small collection of water, but it's in a Rishus Harabim, and people are mehalechas bo, people are willing to walk through it. So then, Hazorek Latocho Dal Ramos Chayev. Then if you throw from a Rishus Hayachid into that puddle, we'd still consider that to be part of the Rishus Harabim, and you'd still be held accountable. The Kama Hirakak Mayim, how much space are we talking about? How deep is it? Says the Gemara, Pachos Me'asar Tfachim. It has to be obviously that it's less than 10 Tfachim, because if it was a pit of 10 by 10 Tfachim filled with water, we just learned on the previous summit, which is not true by fruits, but we just learned that 10 by 4 by 4 is its own Rishus. So this Mishnah is just validating that still more. And then the Gemara, interestingly, quotes the same exact line yet again. This is the last line of the Mishnah. Rakak Mayim Rishus Harabim Mehalechas Bo Hazorek B'Socho Dal Ramos Chayv. Why the repetition? And that's going to be the whole thrust of the Gemara from here till the next Mishnah, and then we'll pause for the night. Omar Lei, Hahumer Me Rabbanan the Rava. One of the rabbis asked Rava, Bishlama Hiluch Hiluch Trei Zimne. I understand if you look in the beginning of the Mishnah, the second line of the Mishnah, it says that it's Mehalechas Bo. And if you look at the last line of the Mishnah, it says, or second to last line of the Mishnah, it says Mehalechas Bo. I understand, says the Gemara to Rava, I understand Bishlama Hiluch Hiluch Trei Zimne. I know why you need to say Mehalechas twice, because Hakamashlan, we learned something very important. We learned that Hiluch al Yedei Hadchak Shmei Hiluch, that even though most people don't walk through puddles, but if you walk through a puddle, it's considered being holech, and therefore it maintains its status of Rishus Harabim. That I got. But Tashmish Yedei Hadchak Lo Shmei Tashmish. However, when it comes to actually using it for a real intentional purpose, then that doesn't, no one would do that. That's not normal. You don't just like specifically choose that as your location to set a picnic. It's not a normal location. So tashmish idea tashmish. That's why the Mishnah quoted the same din twice and spoke about mehalechas twice, was to teach us that there's a difference between hiluch al yedei adchak, which is considered to be hiluch, and tashmish idea adchak, which is not considered to be considered tashmish. Ella, what I don't understand, says the Gemara, is rekak trei zimne lamali. Why does the Mishnah need to indicate that it's a case of rekak, that it's a puddle twice? Why are we quoting this same exact din twice? So here the Gemara presents 3 answers, and we'll wrap up with these 3 answers for the evening. Chad bimosa, this is Rava's answer. Chad bimosa chama, v'chad bimosa gshamim, v'tzriche. Well, we need them. One time the word rekak is used in our Mishnah is to speak about the yemos chama, during the hot summer days, and one of them is used to reference the yemos gshamim, and we need both. Why? Why do we need both? If I only had learned one of them, havamina hani mili, I might have thought the following: during the hot summer days, their feet are boiling hot from the ground. They're willing to walk through the puddle because it's refreshing. They're going to use the puddle during the hot summer days. Aval, maybe I would have thought bimos hagshamim lo. I might have thought that maybe during the winter they would not, and maybe we wouldn't consider it Rishus Harabim. Says Rava, no. Therefore, we needed to have the word rakak twice in the Mishnah to indicate that it would be an Isser D'Oraisa, both bimos hagshamim and bimos hachama, because people would use it also during the winter. How so? Let's see the other side of the coin. Right about a little bit more than a third of the way down. The ashmuinan bimos hagshamim. And if you wanted to indicate that maybe we were only talking about Yemosag Shamim, why would we use a puddle during Yemosag Shamim? Because the Kevan de Mitznefei, because my feet are filthy, it's snowy out, and my shoes have dirt all over them, and I see a puddle, I'm going to go clean off my shoes. They're filthy. So then I might have thought, Lo ichbas lehu, then the water is wonderful. I don't care to walk through that. That's great. Aval b'mosach hamalo, I might have thought that maybe not there. Kamash Malan says, Rabbi, that the reason why we have the language of rakak twice in this Mishnah is to indicate to us that yes, in fact, both are times when one might use them, both in Yemos HaChama and the Yemos HaGsham. The Gemara presents another answer. That was Rabbi. Here comes Abaye. Abaye Amar Itzrich. We need it for a different reason. The double usage of the word rakak, we need it for a different reason. Sal kadai techamina, what might I have thought? Hani mili, heicha delo have daled amos. I might have thought, remember we spoke about the fact in the Mishnah that the depth is less than 10. But I might have also thought, is Hecha de Lo Hava Dalet Amos, where it's not a Dalet Amos path in Rishus Harabim. So let's say it's less than that. Aval Hecha de Have Dalet Amos, Akufe Mikfe Mikfale. I might have thought that you would have walked around it because it's so large, it's Dalet Amos. Kamash Malan. That's what Abaye is saying, the Chiddush of why we have the word Rakak twice, is to include both smaller than Dalet Amos and larger than Dalet Amos. And then Rav Ashi recommends the reverse, which was not necessarily intuitive. Rav Ashi Amar Itzrich, why do we need the language in the Mishnah to say Rakak twice? Salkadai Tachamina, I might have thought Hani Mili Hecha Dehava Dalet. I might have thought that our Mishnah was only talking about Dalet Amos, and that's where the puddle is treated as a chiyuv. Aval Hecha de Lo Havai, but Hecha de Lo Havai Arba, but where it was less than that, people will jump. Mifsei pasele, people will just hop over it, and therefore it's not considered hiluch hayadei adchak, and therefore you'd be patur. Kamash Malan says Rav Ashi, you'd be chayev both if it's less than Dalet Amos and more than Dalet Amos. Even if people jump over it, but still hiluch hayadei adchak is considered to be hiluch. The other Rav Ashi l'taimei. Rav Ashi, who said this last din, that people may jump over the small puddle, Rav Ashi is following his own shita. The Amar Rav Ashi, Haiman de Zarek, someone who throws an item, the Nach Aguda de Gamla, and it falls on one of the boards that's used on a bridge. If you can imagine the rickety bridge that we've all seen in the movies, the dramatic scenes where one of the planks break. So you throw something and it lands on one of those boards. But there, people skip over those boards all the time. You're taking a big stride. You don't step on every single board. It's less than Dalet Amos. So that's what we're saying is how Rav Ashi is l'shitaso. The Amar Rav Ashi, Haiman de Zarek Benoch Aguda de Gamla Mechayev Shahare Rabin Bokimbo, because people use it all the time. Not everyone steps on every single piece of wood every single time. Sometimes you hop over it. Afal Pikin, what do we see? You're chayev here. So therefore, Rav Ashi says that's why we needed to make sure that we included the case that was less than Dalet Amos. We will pause here for the night at this Mishnah and pick up tomorrow night in Yirtzeh Hashem with Daf Kuf Aleph. Wishing you all a beautiful night.